How does terrorism change us? You're listening to Psychology in 10 Minutes. I'm David B. Feldman. In June 2017, a white van sped across London Bridge, ramming into a crowd of pedestrians. Shortly afterwards, 3 assailants leapt out of their vehicle, brutally stabbing people in nearby Borough Market. This blood-curdling attack was one of 3 terror incidents that rocked the United Kingdom in a 10-week period alone, leaving 33 people dead and injuring many more. In addition to numerous Middle Eastern nations, Belgium, Germany, France, Russia, and the United States all have grappled with terror attacks in the 2016 and 17 years, as ordinary people, husbands, wives, children, sisters, and brothers, have succumbed to tragic acts of violence. Many in the media have asked why. Why do terrorists take the lives of innocent people? Some commentators have focused on the terrorists' political motives and have pointed to increasing social media efforts to radicalize would-be assailants. Others have pointed to copycat effects, while still others have said that it's none of these. It's simply criminally deranged behavior. The truth is, it's probably impossible to get into the mind of a terrorist. We're unlikely ever to know exactly why the 3 men, now deceased, did what they did that day on London Bridge. Nonetheless, I think we should take the title of their act at face value: terrorism. On some level, the goal is to spread terror. This begs an important question. Are these attackers actually achieving their goal? In one sense, the answer is clearly no. Most of us are living our lives relatively normally. We're not walking around constantly feeling terrified by the events in the news. We go to work, spend time with family, and hang out with friends, much like we did the day before any one of the attacks. But could this day-to-day normalcy be hiding a bigger shift in our culture? Could there be more insidious, slow-moving effects of terrorism that are going unnoticed? To answer this question, we have to understand how the emotion of terror works. Psychologists Sheldon Solomon, Tom Pazinski, and Jeff Greenberg have spent decades studying the finer points of terror. Their perspective is complicated, to say the least, but they make many important points. According to their writings, collectively known as terror management theory, only human beings can truly feel terror, because we are the only animals with the cognitive capacity to realize that we will die. If we're lucky, we might live, say, 80 or 90 years. Of course, many of us won't, succumbing much earlier to diseases, accidents, or crime. If we really stopped to think about it, we would feel truly terrified. Fortunately, most of the time we don't. According to terror management theory, that's because we human beings have a powerful tool that helps to psychologically defend us against feeling overwhelmed with terror. It's called culture. Not all cultures are the same, of course, but most offer some kind of promise of safety, provided that we behave in a way that is appropriate to that culture. Some cultures even promise everlasting life. In Christian culture, as in many other religious cultures, individuals are literally promised immortality, provided they live up to certain conditions, having faith and doing good works, for instance. But even our secular consumerist culture offers symbolic immortality by offering opportunities to carry our legacy forward in forms such as the businesses we build, the art we create, the buildings we construct, or the children we raise. Culture even provides comforting beliefs like, what comes around goes around. In other words, we're able to reassure ourselves, hey, I'm doing the right things, living up to what's expected, so I'm safe. And the more we are able to live up to the standards of our culture, the safer and more secure we feel. Logically, we know, of course, that none of this is strictly true, but it's enough to put our minds at ease and distract us from the reality that danger could be right around the corner. But terrorism punches holes in these psychological defenses. That's because terrorist attacks are so unpredictable. People who entered the World Trade Center on September the 11th, 2001 were simply going to work. People in Madrid's Atocha station on March 11, 2004 were just boarding the train. and people on London Bridge in June were going about their ordinary days, taking a stroll or enjoying a view of the River Thames. Terrorist acts remind us, in a very palpable way, that none of us is truly safe. So if terrorism shows us that we aren't safe, why aren't we all consumed by raw terror every time one of these horrible acts occurs? The answer is that our cultural defense mechanisms assert themselves. When we're reminded of our fragile mortality, Solomon, Pazinski, and Greenberg argue that we tend to cling even more tightly to the cultural worldview that most comforts us. That's one reason why terrorism against a country tends to lead to increased nationalism in that country. Following the 9/11 attacks, for example, American flags could be seen on practically every residential street in the land, not to mention on many cars, buses, businesses, and billboards. Commitment to one's culture is deeply comforting when it comes to reducing feelings of terror. The coming together of the American populace after 9/11 was a good thing, of course. In the months following the attacks, people visiting New York observed how kind, caring, and helpful people were to one another. But our cultural defense mechanisms also have a darker side. They can drive deep wedges between people of differing cultures. If we look to our own culture for comfort and stability in the aftermath of a terrorist attack, then anything that challenges our culture is potentially a threat to our emotional well-being. The problem is, in our globalized world, challenges to our cultural worldview are everywhere. Every day, our lives brush against people of differing cultures, who were born in different countries and have vastly different ideas than we do. In a way, the existence of people holding contradicting beliefs casts doubt on the validity of our own beliefs. As just one example, if I'm relying on my particular culture's belief that, say, doing certain kinds of behaviors and maybe abstaining from others will enable me to access the afterlife, and then I encounter another culture that says that those practices are bunk, that other culture challenges my comforting beliefs. If I'm not careful, my gut response could be to denigrate that other culture and the people who adhere to it. In other words, in order for my culture to be right, theirs must be wrong or bad. This isn't just a theory. In a now classic study appearing in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, Americans were asked to read a transcript of an interview with a highly credentialed expert who was expressing unfavorable opinions of the United States. After reading the interview, the participants were then asked to rate the degree to which they liked and would be open to meeting the interviewee. Here's the really interesting part. Right before reading his interview, half of the participants were asked to contemplate their own death and the emotions that thinking about their death aroused within them. Exactly as terror management theory would predict, compared to people who were not asked to think about their own death, those who were reminded of their eventual demise gave much more negative opinions of the person in the interview. Even more intriguingly, this happened completely unconsciously. None of the research participants knew they were doing it. This is only one of dozens of studies showing that when reminded of the reality of death, people tend to cling to their own beliefs and cultures and to denigrate individuals with different beliefs and cultures. In case you were wondering, it doesn't matter what country the research is done in. Another study, this time in Germany, showed that when people were reminded of their own fragile mortality, they were more likely to denigrate non-German culture, people, and products. The same effect has been found in people of nations all over the globe. Terrorist attacks remind us of our own fragile mortality, and if terror management theory is right, such attacks should slowly but surely give rise to greater political and societal divisions, prejudice, and suspicion of people of different cultures and with different beliefs. It's a frightening prediction, and one that should give us pause. That was Psychology in 10 minutes.